Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 5 2022 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a fantastic week. The best week I have had this year doing my picks against the spread and straight up. 2 winning weeks in both respects. So, against the spread this week, I went 9-6, and straight up, I had my first double-digit winning week of the season. I went 10-5. I've gone 10-5 straight up. And once again, for everybody, I have the Rams at plus 2.5 or plus 1.5, and I have the Rams winning outright. So I guess the point spread doesn't matter. So I have the Rams winning outright, both against the spread and straight up. So there's that reminder pick for there. But I have hit a significant milestone at the earliest point this year. So through 63 games, respectively, against the spread, I have hit the 500 mark. I've correctly predicted 31 games against the spread, and I've lost 31, and I have a push. So that equals up to 31, 31, and 1, which equals up 500. And as for someone that has done these against the spread picks very badly over the last several years, usually I always tell people by the end of the year, I would like to get to 500. To actually get to this point through 4 weeks is just downright amazing, and I actually probably could maybe have my second, and I believe in anybody that's watched my videos over the past weeks, I believe my second winning season in terms of against the spread picks, but definitely this is a very bright trend for me in terms of where my against the spread picking can go for the rest of the season. I could probably actually have a good winning record against the spread, which is impressive. Though straight up, though, I am now 35, 27, and 1, which equals 56.4%, so I definitely moved up a good amount from last week, being only 2 games above 500, so, you know, getting the 4 extra, getting those few extra games did help. But 56.4 is definitely not where I usually want to be at this point. But I will take it. And I will try to continue to move onward and upward for the rest of the season. But it was a crazy week 4, just as all the other few weeks have been. I want to congratulate Josh McDaniels for getting his first victory since Week 10 of the 2010 NFL season, beating the Denver Broncos 32-23 in just kind of a weird game. Daniel Carlson and Josh Jacobs were the stars. Josh Jacobs had 146 yards, a career high for him, along with 2 rushing touchdowns. First time he's had 2 rushing touchdowns since Week 1 of last year. I thought Derek Carr had an okay game. Daniel Carlson was a big star. He made another 4 field goals. And by the way, fun fact, Daniel Carlson throughout his career has never missed a field goal at home. He is perfect at home throughout his career, so that's an impressive little note there. And the Denver Broncos offense was just pitifully bad, in my opinion. They had a stretch where they had a 3-drive stretch where they went 3 and out 3 consecutive times, and I believe they amassed only 6 total yards of offense, minus penalties and sack yardage. So that was not great by any means. I think that the Broncos, Russ isn't playing great, but I don't think he's playing like a below-average quarterback. He did have 3 touchdowns, but he led the team in rushing. And I also think, again, a big injury concern, or 2 big injuries that happened in the game. Javonte Williams, their number 1 running back, and Randy Gregory left the game, did not come back, and I think those are going to be significant injuries, significant things to monitor moving forward. So there was that. Then you had, in some of the other games, I would congratulate the New York Giants. Let's give the New York Giants some credit. For the first time since 2011, the New York Giants are starting off with a 3-1 record. They had an impressive overall defensive performance. They held the Bears to only 4 field goals. They sacked Justin Fields 6 times. Saquon Barkley had 131 rushing yards, and he is now leading the league in rushing yards. What a story for him. He is definitely having a career resurgence year that reminds people of the 2018 season. And I definitely think he should be the comeback player of the year favorite moving forward through the first month. Daniel Jones was not that great through the air. I think he only threw about 78, 79 yards. But he did have 2 rushing touchdowns, which was basically the difference in the game. And the Giants, for the second time in 4 weeks, in a big special team spot, were able to get a special teams muff from the returner, which got them the turnover that won them the game at the end. The Bears, meh. They had their moments. Justin Fields had his good runs, but he only, I guess he completed more than 17 passes for the first time, but he still only completed 50% of his passes, and just that Bears offense just looks weak and really sad. But I digress. There was that one. When you look at some of the other big games, let's give it up to the Atlanta Falcons, okay? A team that I was very badly wrong about in terms of how good I think, that team was going to be. I thought they were going to be a near top 5 team, but they are now a 500 team, and they are tied with the Buccaneers for first place in the NFC South. I don't think anybody would have thought that at the beginning of the season with those two teams, but Atlanta played pretty well. They had Cordero Patterson and the other young rookie running back get 2 rushing touchdowns. Koo made 3 good kicks, and the Andre Alford with the game-clinching interception on Jacoby Brissett. That is the second time Jacoby has thrown a game-clinching interception to the opposing team. He did that week 2 against the Jets with Ashton Davis. But give the Falcons some credit, and then you look at their counterparts, the Bucs. Boy, did they have a rough night last night on Sunday Night Football, losing 41-31 to the Kansas City Chiefs. That was the most yards. Todd Bowles gave up 189 rushing yards. That is the most rushing yards he has given up as the Tampa Bay head coach and defensive coordinator. So, to me, that was pretty jarring. Look, Brady in the offense did its thing. Mike Evans now has the all-time career scrimmage yard record in Buccaneers franchise history, so kudos to him there. Brady in the offense put up a lot of points, but a lot of those points were in garbage time where they were already down a few scores. And you can tell the beginning of the game was kind of gypped anyway when you had the opening kick muffed by the Bucs. So there was that. Then you had Packers Patriots. That was an interesting one. And I'll talk about some of the other games, or I'll go through my picks. Packers Patriots. The Patriots gave up. The Patriots were running the ball down the Packers' throats. They actually give up, the Packers' run defense gives up about 127 rushing yards per game. So that is really a concern for the Packers moving forward. But unfortunately, I guess due to the injury to Brian Hoyer, who suffered a concussion, Bailey Zappa came in and finished the game. That we did have his first touchdown pass. Bailey did. But at the end of the day, it came down to Rodgers, who threw his 500 touchdown pass to, I believe, to Christian Watson, I believe. And that makes him now the 6th quarterback all time with 500 touchdown passes, regular and postseason combined. Job well done to him. But the Packers survived once again, 27-24 at the end of the game. Or in overtime, by the way. So, there was that. Seattle played a great game. Seattle and Detroit were in this very weird shootout that nobody, 48-45. Geno Smith, about 370 yards from scrimmage. He actually is leading the league in completion percentage at 77.3. That is actually an NFL record as well through the first 4 games. As for a quarterback, and Detroit, as great as they've been, that defense is not good enough at all. And that is, it's amazing. The Lions have a really bad problem. They have the number 1 scoring offense in the league, but they also give up the most points and yards in the league at the same time. So that is how you get a 1-3 record. You can score all the points you want, but you can't even stop anybody. And if you don't get the ball last, you're not going to win. So, and I'll talk about the rest of the games throughout my picks. But here are my picks for Week 5. So on Thursday, when the 1-2-1 Indianapolis Colts travel to Denver to take on the 2-2 Denver Broncos at Empower Field a Mile High, the Denver Broncos are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me the Denver Broncos here, -3, and Denver straight up. Then on Sunday, in the second consecutive London game at Tottenham Stadium, when the 3-1 New York Giants travel to London to take on the 3-1 Green Bay Packers, the Green Bay Packers are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Green Bay Packers here straight up to win, but I'm going to take the New York Giants plus 7.5. Then the next game, when the 1-3 Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Buffalo to take on the 3-1 Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Bills, in the biggest spread line of this season so far, are 14-point favorites against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And look, I know that Mitch Trubisky was replaced by Kenny Pickett in the second half. Kenny Pickett was the first quarterback since 1970 to have 2 rushing touchdowns in his debut game as a rookie. I thought, he had some sparks there. George Pickens had 1 or 2 yards receiving. But at the end of the day here, I think with Pickett in the unknown against this Bills team, which for the most part has struggled more than they have been successful in the last 2 games, even though they are 1-1. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills here to win straight up. And for anybody out there that's still in survival, if you are through a month of this crazy season, I think this would be my lock of the week. Even though, again, I said that that 2 weeks ago about Chiefs Colts, and I was wrong about that one. But I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills here to win straight up at 14 points with Pittsburgh's grit and with Kenny Pickett's unknownness or newness in kind of a good way or a bad way. I just can't take Buffalo with the 14 points. So give me Buffalo here to win straight up at Pittsburgh plus 14. Then the next game, when the 2-2 Los Angeles Chargers travel to Cleveland to take on the 2-2 Cleveland Browns. The Los Angeles Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Los Angeles here -3 and Los Angeles straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-2 Chicago Bears travel to Minnesota to take on the 3-1 Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are 7-point favorites in this game. Give me Minnesota here -7 and Minnesota straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-3 Detroit Lions travel to New England to take on the 1-3 New England Patriots. The New England Patriots, amazingly, after what they have offensively and what they're going through, are 2.5-point favorites at home against the Detroit Lions. And one of my 3 pure outright upsets this weekend. Give me the Detroit Lions here +2.5 and the Detroit Lions straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-2 Seattle Seahawks travel to New Orleans in the Caesars Superdome to take on the 1-3 New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are 4-point favorites in this game. For my second pure upset of the weekend, give me the Seattle Seahawks here +4 and the Seattle Seahawks straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-1 Miami Dolphins travel to New York to take on the 2-2 New York Jets. The Miami Dolphins are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me the Miami Dolphins here -3 and the Miami Dolphins straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-2 Atlanta Falcons travel to Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay's 3rd straight home game. I have to find out when the last time the Bucs lost 3 consecutive home games. Take on the 2-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 8.5-point favorites in this game. I like Atlanta here +8.5, but give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers straight up. I am not going against the Bucs in this spot here. So once again, give me the Atlanta Falcons here +8.5, but I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-2 Tennessee Titans travel to Washington to take on the 1-3 Washington Commanders. The Tennessee Titans are 2-point favorites in this game, or 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Tennessee or -2.5 and Tennessee straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-3-1 Houston Texans, the worst team in the NFL, travel to Jacksonville to take on the 2-2 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 7-point favorites in this game. Give me Jacksonville here -7 and Jacksonville straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-2 or 1-3 San Francisco 49ers travel to Carolina to take on the 1-3 Carolina Panthers. The San Francisco 49ers are 5-point favorites in this game. Give me San Francisco here -5 and San Francisco straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-1 Dallas Cowboys travel to Los Angeles to take on the 2-2 or 3-1 Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams are 6-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Rams here to win straight up, but I'm going to take Dallas +6. Then the next game, when the 4-0 Philadelphia Eagles travel to Arizona to take on the 2-2 Arizona Cardinals. The Philadelphia Eagles are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles here -5.5 and the Philadelphia Eagles straight up. Then in the Sunday night game, when the 2-2 Cincinnati Bengals travel to Baltimore to take on the 2-2 Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are 3.5-point favorites in this game. In my third and final pure upset of the weekend of this week, I am going to take these Cincinnati Bengals here +3.5 and the Cincinnati Bengals straight up. Then in the Monday night game, when the 1-3 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Kansas City to take on the 3-1 Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are 7-point favorites in this game. Give me Kansas City here -7 and Kansas City straight up. Alright, so time for my thoughts on each game. The Denver Broncos over the Indianapolis Colts. This one to me just comes down to I just really don't trust the Colts a lot. Look, here's one thing that was very telling about the Broncos here. Melvin Gordon has Butterfingers. And look, Butterfingers are a great candy, but it's never good to be known as a football player with Butterfingers. Because he has fumbled 4 times this year, and 2 of those fumbles have resulted in touchdowns for that, for the other team. So that is a massive problem, and good for Amin Robinson, who returned the touchdown for the Raiders, though Carlson missed the extra point. So that is a massive problem, and I think, again, 2 significant injuries, Javonte Williams and Randy Gregory. Javonte Williams, they think, has a serious knee injury, and Randy Gregory was getting an MRI today as well. So, to me, this Broncos team, it's not great. It looks discombobulated. Russ can have his moments. He had a great pass to Eric Saubert. He had a great pass to Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. He had that 55-yard pass to KJ Hamler, which was a big spot. But it seemed like whenever they get in the red zone, they just cannot cash it in, when they need to. They only had 12 first downs the entire game against the Raiders defense, which is one of the worst in the league. And again, I also think another big problem that is I think Daniel Hackett is the Denver Broncos are committed 37 penalties through 4 games. That is the most in the NFL this year. So they are constantly getting in their own way with holding calls, offsides, defensive holdings, pass interference. They're just constantly getting in their own way, limiting the offense or stifling the offense or defense in big spots to where they need stops or need to make plays. So, I think the reason why I'm going with Denver is just that I look at the Colts and they have one of the worst offenses in the league. And though, look, they offensively put up 365 yards of offense on the Titans. They were, moving the ball up and down the field. Mo Alley Cox had himself a day. Alex Pierce came up with the biggest catch of his career. The reason why the Colts lost that football game, they had 3 turnovers. Matt Ryan, they had 2 big fumbles, one from Taylor and one from Ryan, and then Matt Ryan threw an interception. Those 3 turnovers cost the Colts that game. And they have 2 significant injuries. Shaquille Leonard, who was already coming off a back injury, left the game with a concussion, so I don't think he'll be coming back Thursday. And Jonathan Taylor, for the first time last week, missed a practice for the first time in his football career, high school, college, or pro. And he has a high ankle sprain, so he, might try to go, but I don't think that, I don't think he, but if he doesn't go, that's pretty much dead in the water, because if the Colts, whose offensive line has had, some positives, but some bad moments as well, I'm going to trust that Denver defense, even if Gregory's not there, to be able to generate enough pressure. And I think Matt Ryan, with the limited weapons he has, I think that secondary can do a good enough job. Look, Russell Wilson last year, week 1, as a Seahawk against the Colts, he threw for 254 passing yards. He had 4 touchdowns and interceptions against most of these same Colt defenders. So, to me, and also, look, Russell Wilson in his career, in 43 primetime games, ladies and gentlemen, he is 30-12-1 in primetime football. This is one of the most consistent primetime players you can have in the league. So that's why I'm going to go with the Broncos. If the Colts, if the Colts would have beat the Titans, I might have gone with the Colts, just because I feel like, again, the Colts have had more and more offensive consistency, but just with the turnovers and the injuries to Taylor and Leonard, if they don't have Taylor or Leonard, I just don't see how the Broncos lose this game with how Matt Ryan's been playing. It should be an interesting game, and I feel like, definitely for the Colts, this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back for any hope they have, because I think they play Jacksonville next week. So if they're off to a 1-5-1 or 1-4-1 start, yeah, that's gonna be a real massive problem that I just don't think the Colts are gonna be able to, lift themselves out of. So that's why I like Denver here -3, and Denver straight up. Then the next game, when the Green Bay Packers over the New York Giants, I am taking the Green Bay Packers here based off of the better quarterback. To me, I look at this game and go, look, the Giants, they've impressed a lot of people. They have. They have impressed a lot of people. They've impressed a lot of people. They have done a, very good job winning gritty, grimy games. Saquon Barkley, like I said before, is leading the league in rushing. He's done a fantastic job. Daniel Jones was also a big contributor with the rushing as well, with the 2 touchdowns. But I think the 2 things to me was Daniel Jones is day-to-day with an ankle injury. That's why Tyrod Taylor came to the game. Daniel Jones actually had to come back into the game due to an ankle injury. And they were actually running by the end of the game Wildcat plays for Saquon Barkley out of the backfield. I just, to me, with the Giants, this is that moment to where everybody that has confidence in the Giants, I feel like this is where a competitive loss will be a win for the Giants, and a competitive game for the Packers will be another tough L. To where, yes, you are winning games of Aaron Rodgers and this offense, but it's just because you have Rodgers. If you did not have nearly as good a quarterback, or, if you had an average quarterback with that roster, you would be winning the games that they have been winning so far. And again, I think a big concern will be the Green Bay Packers are giving up nearly 127 rushing yards per game. And with how Saquon is playing, you are playing the leading rusher. If that Giants offensive line can hold enough, kind of like what the Patriots line did, I think this game could be within that 7.5 points. But at the end of the day, if you're telling me with the weapons about the same, I'm going to take Aaron Rodgers, and the Packers team over the Giants. I know, look, Jair's hurt, and Adrian Amos left the game. So this Packers team is a little bit banged up secondary in the secondary and defensively. But I'm just going to trust Rodgers and Matt LaFleur, who, by the way, very impressive stat here. Matt LaFleur has the highest winning percentage for a head coach through at least 50 games, or counting about 50-plus games in NFL history. He has won 78.8% of his games through his 4-year tenure as the Packers head coach. I know a lot of people will say that is due to Aaron Rodgers in a way, and that's fair. But I am really impressed with LaFleur. And I think he and Rodgers win this game just based off of Rodgers' talent. And I just trust the Packers defense to make a few more stops to a hobbled up Daniel Jones, and they shut down Barkley. Enough to win. So that's why I like the Green Bay Packers here to win straight up with the New York Giants plus 7.5. And very quickly, if I didn't say, for the Monday night game, when the 1-3 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Kansas City to take on the 3-1 Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are 7-point favorites in this game. Giving the Kansas City Chiefs here -7. Kansas City Chiefs straight up. So if I did not mention that Monday night pick, there it is there. Now back to the regularly scheduled programming. The Buffalo Bills over the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is one to where, again, this is probably the easiest pick of the weekend. The Buffalo Bills, to me, right now, are the second best team in the AFC. Probably, I would say, the third best team in the league, period. And look, when you look at how the Steelers played, it wasn't great. Trubisky was like 8 of 13 for 70 yards. He threw another pick as well. And I feel like for Trubisky, this is the end of his, starting career at the very least. I think maybe after this year, this might be the end of his NFL career, period. We just how rough he has played through the first, few games. And again, I was impressed with George Pickens. He's starting to become that clear number one receiving option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had 6 catches for about 104 yards. And it was a rarity as well, because this was the second home loss for the Steelers all time against the New York Jets. They were 10-1 entering the game. Now they are 10-2. And just a fun fact, for all the ketchup lovers out there, and all the people like me, and all these young people that call the Pittsburgh Stadium Heinz Field, ever since they have changed the name of the stadium, 0-2, they have not won a game in Acrisure since they have changed the name. And look, but they're playing a Bills team that through the first half, they had 130 total yards and 10 points. It was that McKenzie touchdown which saved them late. This was also the largest comeback in Josh Allen's career. He was down 17 points at one point entering, the end of the second quarter, and they were able to come back and win 23-20 off a Tyler Bass 31-yard field goal. And I want to give kudos to Sean McDermott and his staff for being able to stop at the 2-yard line to let the clock run out, to let Tyler Bass kick the game-winning field goal at the end there. And also for the Bills, this is a revenge factor. A lot of those Bills were on that roster last year when they lost to that inexplicable home game against the Steelers, 23-16, last year. So this Bills team is going to be pretty motivated to, kick the teeth into the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think, look, the Bills just have a clearly better fundamental roster in most areas, pretty much all areas. No TJ Watt again. It's just going to be an ugly game. The only reason why I'm taking Pittsburgh plus 14 is I don't know how Kenny Pickett's going to look in a full game wise. He could play well enough. He showed some athleticism. He was a more accurate passer that he maybe could cover the 14 points. Maybe. But I wouldn't bank on it, And the Bills, look, they're 3-1, but the last 2 weeks they haven't been sharp. They were clearly the better team in week 3 and they lost. And you could argue they weren't for the most of the game the better team in week 4, but they won. So against the Steelers here, maybe it manages out, it balances out, and the Bills get a dominating performance against the Steelers like we saw in weeks 1 and 2. I think this Bills team is going to start rounding into form, and I just think with how bad the Steelers team is, I think the Steelers-Bills game is going to end up more like the weeks 1 and 2 game for the Bills compared to weeks 3 and 4. But the only reason why I'm taking Pittsburgh plus 14 is I don't know what Pickett's going to bring. If Pickett plays like a rookie in his first official start, then yeah, that could be a 14, 17-point game by the end of the half. But with the unknown, I'm going to give Pittsburgh their respect that they can cover the 14. So, but we'll see. So that's why I like Buffalo here to win straight up at Pittsburgh plus 14. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Cleveland Browns. This is one to where I am taking the Chargers because this Charger team has the better quarterback and a healthier defense it has the better quarterback. Okay. Justin Herbert had his 19th 300-yard passing day through 3 seasons. That ties Andrew Luck for the most such games in their first 3 years. Austin Eckler had 3 touchdowns, like I said before, throughout the game that won them the game. And he had 0 touchdowns through the first 3 games. And the Chargers defense, led by Khalil Mack, without Joey Bosa, who should be out for the next 7 to 9 weeks with a groin injury due to the surgery he had, was able to get 4 big sacks to help, stifle Davis Mills' attempts in trying to pass and make some plays. And it's just hard, man, looking at the Chargers. Like, Herbert looked good. Herbert looked solid. Herbert looked efficient. And you look at the Browns and go, Jacoby, man, two of the 4 games, man. You had the chance to win it or try to drive down to win the game, and you threw game-losing interceptions to Ashton Davis of the Jets and DeAndre Alford of the Falcons that cost them the game. Like, this Browns team, they could very easily, after those 2 plays don't happen or if Nick Chubb doesn't go across the goal, they could be a 3-1 or an undefeated football team without Deshaun Watson. Kevin Stefanski would have been coach of the year by far just because of that medal alone. But they are a 500 team that show you the positives and the highlights of being able to beat the Panthers in a tough one, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, who finally look like they're going to be in the basement of the division. But then they have these Browns moments where they play the Jets and the Falcons, where they should be the favorites, and they let you down and they lose. And I do want to congratulate Denzel Ward for getting a big interception on Mariota. Mariota really didn't have that great of a day, but he didn't need to. And Nick Chubb is second in the league in rushing. So if you have anybody in fantasy like I do, he's doing a fantastic job carrying this team on his shoulders with the running. But when I look at this game, like, I have to go with the better quarterback here, and that's Justin Herbert over Brissett. I think the Browns' offensive weapons besides Cooper, who only had 15 yards receiving the whole day, really didn't do that well. And they have a good enough secondary with JC, with Derwin, with Asante, that I trust that secondary to limit the Browns passing attack once again. And I think also here's another key stat that I'm just going to roll with here. Since the Chargers have moved to Los Angeles back in 2017, they have never lost to the Browns. I think they have played the Browns 3 times. The Chargers have won all 3 meetings since they moved to Los Angeles. Could the Browns make it competitive? Sure. I think the Browns' offensive line and that run defense that has had some bad moments, definitely Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson, if they give him some opportunities, definitely can definitely shorten the game, run the clock out, and let Jacoby have some wide open throwing lanes against a defense which has had some problems with momentum starting and stopping. But at the end of the day, I think the Chargers, they have the better quarterback. They have the better overall roster of talent that just is firing better. And I believe that's the reason why they win this game. It should be close, and I wouldn't be that surprised if the Browns won because the Browns had some moments. But if you're going to take Justin Herbert, Jacoby Brissett, I'm going to take Justin Herbert with his offense, regardless of how banged up it is or not, to beat the Browns. So that's what I like the Los Angeles Chargers here, -2.5, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the Chicago Bears. This is one to where I am taking the Minnesota Vikings to win this football game. Based off the fact that they are just they just have more talent around them. Justin Fields got sacked 6 times yesterday. Overall for the year, he's been sacked 16 times. Khalil Herbert had a good day. He had 101 total yards in scrimmage, but just looking at this Vikings roster, Dalvin Cook, who had 20 carries for 77 yards, did a nice job. Cousins had some nice effective throws. Justin Jefferson had a monster day. He has 393 yards receiving. He's one of the top 5 receivers in the entire league. Full stop. And they were to get 2 big turnovers on the Saints, which was incredibly impressive to me. And Cousins did throw that duck up to Tyrann Mathieu. Kudos to him, but that was a tough pill to watch there. But I just look at this Vikings roster and go, Minnesota's won 3 of the last 4 against the Bears. And I just feel like, again, are the Bears being competitive? Sure, they look better. But Justin Fields is completing, he completed 11 to 22 passes the other day. Like, he's just not, and I don't think it's all his fault, but he just can't move the ball with what limited offensive weapons he has outside of Khalil Herbert. Because even Cole Kmet's not even doing anything. And I just think, look, the Vikings, they have the better offensive line, they have the better defense, they have the better secondary. Best wishes to Lewis Sign, the rookie of the Vikings. He suffered a fractured, I think, leg, and he's going to be out for the season, but he had to stay back in London due to the injury. And I'm just going to trust that Cousins, the recent history in his 1 o'clock starts against this Bears team, I just think it continues, and I think the Vikings easily get a victory. And the reason why I'm going with the Vikings -7 is the 2 losses the Bears have had, they have lost by at least 7 points. So the Bears have at least shown that they, can lose by the spread throughout the season so far. So that's like Minnesota here -7 and Minnesota straight up. The next game, the Detroit Lions over the New England Patriots. This is one to where I just have to trust the Lions roster, even with the injury to DJ Chark, DeAndre Swift, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who did not play. They still were able to score a lot of points. They still were able to do a good job. And look, amazingly, here's a great stat for everybody as well. Lamar Jackson, who is having an MVP-type year, maybe not due results, but an MVP-type year, he has 11 passing touchdowns. There is one other quarterback in the league that has the same amount of passing touchdowns through 4 games. It's not Patrick Mahomes. It's not Josh Allen. It's not Justin Herbert. It's not any of the big names. It's Jared Goff, ladies and gentlemen. Jared Goff also has 11 passing touchdowns through 4 weeks. And like I said before, I'll say it again, the Lions have the best offense in terms of points and yards per game. But the reason why they are 1-3 is they have the worst defense in terms of yards and points per game. So when you have that big of a discrepancy on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, basically, if you do not have the ball last to end the game and you're in a 1-score game, you will lose the game because your defense cannot be trusted. But the reason why I'm taking the Lions is I just think it's a lot due to the injuries. Mac Jones is dealing with that high ankle sprain. He was doing individual workouts, if I remember, but it wasn't great. And he was inactive. They think he's going to be out several weeks, so I don't really think Mac Jones is going to be able to play this week. Brian Hoyer's going through the protocol. He left the game in the second quarter against the Packers. So that's tough. And if it's Bailey Zappa in his first start, I just can't trust Bailey Zappa in that offense. They didn't have Jacoby Myers. Jonnu Smith left the game. I was impressed about Ramondre Stevenson. He had a big rushing day. Damian Harris kind of complimented that really well. And I would say, look, Matt Judon playing pretty well. He's had a sack in every game through 4 games. Good job for him, the former Raven. But I just have to take the Lions. Like, I think the Lions, if you look at the games, the Lions have been in more competitive and entertaining games to where if they just had a decent defense or a 20th ranked defense, they could be a 3-1 football team at this point in the year, but they do not. And the Lions are trying to look for their first road win in New England, ladies and gentlemen, since week 2 of 1993. So this Lions team, it will be 29 years since they've gone to New England to try to win a football game, and I think they get it done. I think Goff has played well enough offensively that I think they'd be able to run the ball with Jamal or DeAndre, or Jamal, if they can run the ball with Jamal, because I don't think DeAndre is going to play. But I have confidence in the Lions offense and just the ineptitude of the Patriots offense. The Lions defense can do a good enough job and Aaron Glenn can kind of rebound after what happened last week. I think Hutchinson should have a good game against the Patriots offensive line to generate some pressure, and I just think Jared Goff outplays Zappa or Hoyer in this type of game from what I've seen through the first 4 weeks. That's why I was surprised that the Lions were getting 2.5. I thought it would be basically a pick 'em because I think, okay, you could say, well, New England's at home, it's the Lions, it's the history of the Lions, you shouldn't have any faith in them, but I disagree with that. I'm going to take the Lions here to win this game based off of offensive talent, coaching, having better assistant coaches, and just trusting that the Lions, can effectively run the ball, and Goff can just outplay Zappa or Hoyer in this kind of game with better talented weapons. So that's why I like Detroit here, plus 2.5, and Detroit straight up. The next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the New Orleans Saints. This is a game to where I am taking Seattle based off of the better quarterback play. Geno Smith, through 4 games, 77.3% of his passes he is completing. That is an NFL record. I want to congratulate Tariq Wooten. He's the first rookie defensive player in the Pete Carroll era to score a defensive touchdown. And also, just a fun fact, the Seahawks love playing the Lions. The last 2 times, both in Seattle last year and Detroit yesterday, the Seahawks have at least scored 48-plus points in both those games. So definitely, Dan Campbell's defense, Geno or Russ or whoever, they love moving the ball up and down the field against that Lions defense. And the other reason why I'm going to take Seattle is Seattle's healthier right now. New Orleans is dealing with a lot of big offensive injuries. Michael Thomas is dealing with a toe injury. James Winston's dealing with an ankle and back injuries. And Alvin Kamara is dealing with his rib injury, which made him miss 2 of the last 4 games. Or 2 of the last 3 games. And here's the thing about that. Andy Dalton, was admirable. He did have, a couple big fumbles, which kind of cost him in a spot. And, it was Will Lutz who, again, made his career-long 60-yarder, but he missed the career-long 1-yard-back 61-yarder off the double doink. I just think, the Saints team, Jarvis really hasn't done that much. Mike really allowed to big the offense, and I think Seattle's defense can limit. They can limit Ingram and Murray enough. I think they can to make Andy throw. And I think Seattle's defense has a good enough backbone, and just Geno offensively. I think Geno is playing well enough that I think he can outplay Andy Dalton with the weapons he has around him. That Seattle offensive line, unfortunately with Russ now gone, is much better. I've watched Seattle play. That Seattle offensive line is very good. And Cross and the other guy they drafted are playing really well. And I think, they still have Damian Lewis. I think the Seahawks team, if they can win this game, they're going to hang around a lot longer than people think. And also, just kind of an idea to where, as well, Pete Carroll has been one of the better West to East Coast coaches in a while. Through the last 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, through the last 7 years, Pete Carroll has won 70% of the games that he has played on the East, Central East Coast. And I know that, look, they're going to be in Central Time due to Louisiana, so it's really going to be a 11 a.m. start for them. Or, instead of a 10 a.m. West Coast start. But, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm going to take Geno and the offense of the Seahawks to outplay whatever, is left of the Saints, or what the Saints will be putting out there. If Kamara, Winston, and Thomas, and I'm just going to put this out there for everybody, if they all play, I think, taking New Orleans straight up, if that was the point, I would understand that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick with Seattle both ways regardless. If those 3 play, then I would definitely tell everybody. I can definitely see people taking New Orleans, but I still think at the end of the day, if everybody, if you want to take my advice, take Seattle +4 in this game. Because I feel like Seattle's played a lot better and much more efficiently than I thought, and I think New Orleans, through their defensive coaching mishaps, through Andy Dalton and what limited offense they have, if they take out Olave, let Jarvis try to beat you, and that'd be it. But that's what I like Seattle here +4 and Seattle straight up. The next game, the Miami Dolphins over the New York Jets. Let me, everybody, give my thoughts on what happened with Tua Tagovailoa. Of course, that was the big story, or one of the biggest stories of the whole week, was on Thursday. After Tua Tagovailoa suffered a concussion, or a back injury, if you will, against the Buffalo Bills, where they said his back locked up, and then he started walking and fell down, and was cleared by the independent neurologist that the Dolphins hired. He was put in the game Thursday, and then he suffered a second concussion, which knocked him out for 10-plus minutes on the field motionless. He was sent to a Trauma 1 level center, or a Level 1 trauma center. Sorry for my little inverse of words there. And he was diagnosed with concussion. He was released by the University of Cincinnati Hospital and was able to fly back with the Miami Dolphins. But I believe he suffered a severe second concussion due to fencing, which I was reading up throughout the weekend, is where the middle part of the brain gets jarred significantly. And then at that point they brought in Teddy Bridgewater. Bridgewater played an okay game. He did that really bad interception to Von Bell, who had 2 interceptions, one earlier to on an underthrow to Tyreek Hill. But that was the big thing. So very quickly, I would say what I would have done if I were the Dolphins, I would not have played him you know, looking back, I would not have played him on Thursday. I would have let Teddy start and let him go on. And what I would say for the Dolphins right now, okay, just because you look at their schedule, they have Chicago, Pittsburgh, Minnesota coming up over the next several weeks, along with the Jets. Put Tua on the IR. Give the man a month. Let the man just rest and get the ultimate confidence and boost, and give him an ample amount of time to rest. And then, you know, and maybe I would say, you know, to be extra cautious, and again, this might be too far, but, you know, give my thoughts. I would wait to see if the Dolphins made the playoffs. I'd let Tua rest all that time up to the playoffs, and then maybe let him come back in at that point. Because at that point, you have several months to recover. I think Teddy can do the job against the schedule they have to win enough games to get this team into the playoffs, for how shaky the AFC is. But I think at this point, I definitely would say this Tua should not be playing this weekend at all against the Jets. McDaniel said there was no timeline for his return, which is good. But, you know, that'll be the key point there. And the reason why I'm taking the Dolphins over the Jets is just, you know, again, let me give the Jets some credit. 2 big stats here. 3. So Zach Wilson, he was the first QB with the New York special, the touchdown pass from Braxton Berrios, imitating the 2017 Philly special. So that was a nice little fun fact. And for the first time since 2000, the Jets have 2 wins when they have trailed by 10 plus points at any point in the season. So for the first time since 2000, the Jets were down 10 points in 2 consecutive games, and they were able to come back and win. And the Jets caused 4 turnovers, which is the most turnovers they have caused since week 1 of the 2019 season. But I look at this and go, with the Jets, they've lost 8 of the last 9 to the Dolphins. Solid, you know, couldn't beat them. They've pretty much, you know, gotten handled pretty well. I think the Dolphins, look, defensively have done a pretty fairly, you know, solid job. They really can't generate a pass rush, but they do everything else defensively pretty well. And I think the Jets, look, they've been very fortunate to get the wins they've had, playing against a rookie quarterback and a backup quarterback, playing against Teddy Bridgewater, who was a backup. He's better than both those guys right now combined, and I think the Dolphins, with the confidence they have, the motivation they have, and the talent they have, should be able to win this game on the road against the Jets to make it 9 out of 10 for the Miami Dolphins. So that's why Miami here, -3, and Miami straight up. Next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Atlanta Falcons. I mentioned before about the most points in rushing yards, 41 and 189 rushing yards given up by Todd Bowles' defense. They also, you know, Brady, in that short amount of time he had the ball, 21 minutes, had 358 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have that one fumble from Jarvis Sneed. And it just comes down to me, I'm taking the Bucs here because Brady's never lost to him. He's played I think the Falcons 7 times. He has never lost a game through all his time in New England, the postseason game, which everybody remembers, and the NFC. He's never lost a game to the Falcons. And I just think with how the Bucs offensively played, if they can get their stuff together defensively enough, I think they should be able to play a complete game against the Falcons and win this game. Look, the Falcons are going to make it competitive. The Falcons are, you know, going to make it tough. Look, last year, Matt Ryan and them, you know, were pretty much going back and forth week 2 in Tampa. In that game, you know, it took basically 2 pick sixes from Mike Edwards to win and kind of ice the game by a significant margin for the Buccaneers to win. I still think the Bucs win, just because I feel like, again, the Bucs' offensive weapons are not like the Browns, so where you really don't have to worry about Amari Cooper in the receiving threat, and nobody else really provides that significant of a threat. And also, you know, kudos to the Falcons' defense. They held Amari Cooper to only 1 reception for 9 yards the entire game. But at the end of the day here, with the offensive confidence, with Donovan Smith getting back into form, with the pass rush they have, with Vita Vea being irritated, and with that Falcons offensive line, which had definitely shown some flaws, I think the Bucs pull off a good quality win that get them back on the right track. And again, I think this game will be more interesting because I think the Falcons are going to be more competitive than people give them credit for. They're much better than I thought they would be because I didn't think they'd be a 500 team through 4 weeks. But I am going to take Tampa here. The history of Brady against this team, the weapons that the Bucs have, and I think the defense will respond in a much more significant way playing the Falcons offense that is much weaker and inconsistent compared to the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's why I like Tampa Bay here to win straight up at Atlanta plus 8.5. The next game, the Tennessee Titans over the Washington Commanders. This is one to where I am just going to trust the Titans staff. Both quarterbacks are about even. Tannehill's played a nice couple games. Derrick Henry had a very nice, return back to Indianapolis last year. This time he got injured in that game. This time around he had 114 rushing yards and a big touchdown. They got 3 huge turnovers on the Colts, like I said earlier. And Robert Woods called his first passing touchdown for the Tennessee Titans themselves. Good old Bobby Trees. And also, I just feel like with the Titans, I think they should be able to have a good day against the Washington offensive line. The Washington offensive line has allowed they've allowed 9 sacks through 4 games, and I believe they've given up 10 sacks over the last 2 games. Even though I do realize that Philadelphia got 9 of those, so that is very much lopsided. But Washington's offense though really hasn't been that much great either. After the first 2 games where they put up 27 and 29, they've averaged only 9 points per game the last 2 games against the Eagles and Cowboys. Terry McLaurin had a quiet day. He only had 2 receptions for 15 yards. And I'm just going to go off the history here. Tennessee, or the Houston Oilers / Tennessee Titans franchise, have won 4 of the last 5 games in Washington at the RFK Stadium and FedEx Field now. I like what the Titans have. I think the Titans, they have Henry. They have that offensive line, which is building together. Carson, I think, just looks flustered, and that offensive line's had some rough moments. The Titans don't have as much good of a pass rush, but if you're telling me right now who's been playing better, I'm going to take the Titans, who have won 2 straight in, tough, gritty, close fashion. 9 points for your 2 wins. That's 4.5 points per game. That's not a lot. The Commanders, though, have looked worse. Carson's looked inept and lost and just frustrated. He was throwing tablets and throwing helmets all around yesterday. And I just think Tannehill plays a more efficient and a better game compared to Carson. I think Carson makes that one bigger mistake compared to Tannehill. They give the Titans their 3rd straight victory, getting to 3-2. So that's why Tennessee are minus 2.5 and Tennessee straight up. The next game, the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Houston Texans. This is one to where, look, I'm going to congratulate Dameon Pierce. He had the longest rushing touchdown by a Texans rookie in franchise history at 75 yards. Also, through 4 games, Dameon Pierce is a top 10 running back. He is 10th in the league in rushing at this point. And I also think another one of the big problems for me is Davis Mills. Through the first 2 games, Davis Mills did not commit any turnover. The last 2 games, Davis Mills has thrown at least two interceptions in both those games. When you look at Jacksonville, I was impressed with what they were be able to gain with. Cisco, I think it was Andrew Cisco, had the 59-yard pick 6 off the double coverage ball. That was a pick 6. That was a big return. But they really shut down pretty well. Christian Kirk had 2 receptions for 60 yards, but he had 1 reception for 45 yards. So if you take that 1 reception away, the man only had 1 catch for 15 yards. And Trevor Lawrence, again, he committed 4 fumbles in that game and lost every single one of them. If he is able to just hold on to the ball a bit better, I think they win. They could win that game, especially on that last ending drive there where a fumble cost them the game. And look, this is going to be a weird moment, okay? Because I remember last year in week 1, everybody was hyped on Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. And I was saying, let's look at Tyrod and let's take the Texans to win. And the Texans, in a very good way, won that game by about 10 plus points. Boy, can a lot change in a year with different coaches and different staff and more talent, because I am trusting the Jags for the first time. Since the last time the Jags made the playoffs, they've been swept 4 consecutive years by the Houston Texans. I believe that streak ends on Sunday. I just think the Jags have been one of the better teams. They are definitely kind of the iffy team in terms of perception. But I'm going to take the Jags. I think Trevor's been playing better. Davis has not. And I just think the Jags have just much better talent and consistency with Peterson at the helm compared to Urban Meyer. And I just can't trust Houston. They've been good. They're kind of like Detroit. They've been competitive in ways that, people want to give them credit for. But at the end of the day, they just can't somehow seem a way to find a win. So that's why Jacksonville -7 and Jacksonville straight up. The next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the Carolina Panthers. This is one to where, look, Carolina has been a disaster. Carolina has had, through 55 minutes of that game, had 55 total yards and only a field goal to show for it, because Frankie Avulu, or the one defender for the Panthers, got the pick 6 on Kyler Murray. But that was it. And then they scored that 13-yard touchdown pass from Baker to Christian McCaffrey at the end. And I just want to say this, everybody. DJ Moore, this guy that made $20.6 million. Is he really good? And he's a Maryland guy, and I don't want to say this about Maryland guys, but is he any good? Because this guy has not even had 50, he hasn't had more than 50 yards receiving in any of the 4 games this year. And they're paying that guy $20.625 million per year. And he is acting like that big of a scrub? Really? Like, see, like that's the, yeah, we gotta look at DJ Moore, man. You're making that money. Like, I know Baker has a 15 QBR, and he has played downright awful. You know, he had, 2 horrible interceptions, and it was not great. Baker has not been great, and Sam Darnold is knocking on that door, which will basically end Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers' tenure, because his QBR is a 15.4. But it's just something where DJ Moore, that guy is not worth the money that he got paid. Just putting that out there. Also, here's a fun stat that was on the Action Network, and people like, so Matt Rule and the Panthers. Does everybody know that Matt Rule is 1-26 all time when his defense allows 17 or more points? That's the number. If the Niners can score 17 points, you're probably going to beat the Panthers. He is 10-0 when his team is allowed 16 or fewer points. So, there's a fun fact there. Yeah, so Matt Rule, the magic number for the Panthers is 17. If your offense can put up 17 points on the Panthers, you're probably going to win that football game. And I think the Niners, with the talent they have, with the kind of consistency they've shown, and the number 1 defense they have, I think they can win that game easily. They might be able to actually stop the trend either, to where even if they put up 16 or fewer points, I think the Niners are still going to win with the number 1 defense. The Panthers have won 6 of the last 8 against the Niners. So, it's going to be a bit of a different trend, but I'm going to take the Niners here, regardless of what happens. I think even with Trent Williams out, I think the Niners play a better game. They run the ball more effectively, and I think Baker just has a lot of trouble with that San Francisco pass rush, and he causes another 1 or 2 turnovers, which knocked the Panthers to 1-4. So that's like San Francisco here -5, and San Francisco straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Dallas Cowboys. Cooper Rush is the first Dallas quarterback ever to start a career 4-0. The Cowboys have allowed the fewest rushing touchdowns this year. They are the 3rd best defensive points and the 7th best in yards. I think, again, and Dak Prescott, I think here's the big thing. Dak Prescott has said that he is eager and he is trying to come back for this game. I think that for me, I think regardless if Dak or Cooper play, I think the Cowboys still should be able to cover, because I really like how this Cowboys defense is playing. And they're playing a Rams offensive line that have shown, especially against the Bills, that they are not nearly as good, and they are playing a lot more sloppy, and with the limited amount of receiving options they have. And look at the Rams running attack. That's also a problem as well. The Rams have Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers have 216 rushing yards combined through 3 games, not entering today or tonight. And Allen Robinson, the bum that I thought he was, that was overpaid by $15.5 million per year by the Rams, he only has 7 catches and 88 yards through 3 games entering tonight. Ben Skoranek, a 7th-round pick, is doing better than Allen Robinson is. He's not a better receiver than Allen Robinson is, but he's performing better than Allen Robinson is, which is a massive problem. But at the end of the day, just one of those things where, look, the Dallas Cowboys have not won a game in Los Angeles since week 1 of the 1984 season, and I just don't think they're going to be able to pull one out on Sunday. I just think Stafford will outplay Dak, and I'm going to trust McVay over McCarthy in this spot. This game should be interesting, and if that Cowboy defense can generate a lot of pressure and cause turnovers, they can probably win this game with Cooper or Dak. I just don't think they will. I think the Rams just make a few more plays or get a couple more big stops compared to the Cowboys to win this game. So that's like the Los Angeles Rams are straight up, but give me the Dallas Cowboys +6. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Arizona Cardinals. This is one to where the Philadelphia Eagles have number 1 rushing attack in the NFL. Defensive line's played fantastic. They finally scored a touchdown in the second half. When Miles Sanders ran it in, they finally scored a touchdown. First time in 2 games they scored a touchdown in the second half. Disagreed with the extra point fiasco. Miles Sanders had a career high in rushing yards. And Hollywood Brown, the one positive thing about the Cardinals was he did score a 2nd touchdown of the season, which iced the game for the Cardinals. But I look at the Eagles and Cardinals. The Eagles have just been clearing away offensively, defensively. They're tied with the league lead in turnovers at 10. They have the most sacks in the NFL at 16. They have the 9th ranked defense in terms of points. third best defense in terms of yards. Like, this is the best team by a mile. When this Cardinal team, they are 500, but it is not a pretty 500. It's awkward. It was a magical 20-point comeback. They really should be a 1-3 football team. It wasn't for the Raiders being the Raiders. But it just in this matchup, the Eagles are just... If there was a second lock of the week, this would probably be it. Maybe the Cardinals offensively, with Kyler, with some of the weapons if he gets back, maybe he can make it a competitive game on the spread. But I don't think the Eagles win this game. I don't think the Cardinals win this game by really any chance, just with how both these teams have been playing. Sounds like Philadelphia minus 5.5. Philadelphia straight up. Then the final two games, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Baltimore Ravens. This is one to where, ladies and gentlemen, the Baltimore Ravens have been an absolute choking disaster this year. The Ravens are the first team since play-by-play data was tracked in 1991 to be tied or leading and have the ball inside the opponent's 5-yard line and then turn the ball over and lose the game without retaining possession. Because John Harbaugh and his massive big ball analytic crap was talking about how, well, we didn't want to have our defense play 4 downs. We didn't want to do that. Though Justin Tucker has made 59 consecutive field goals in the fourth quarter. And we've won 2 17-point leads in back-to-back games. Lamar threw an interception on a 4th down pass, 25 pass attempts. And we've lost 5 straight home games. Like, John Harbaugh and his stupidity with analytics cost us this game because he didn't have any faith in our defense, and he was trying to go for the kill instead of trying to just play for the advantage. And for all the analytic nerds out there that love using those aggressive numbers, that's why sometimes being conventional still is a good thing. Field goals and punting are still a valuable thing, even if you can't get things. So, I just want to just say that, And John Harbaugh, if he fails at the end of this year, doesn't make the playoffs, the man's made the playoffs only 4 times in the last 9 seasons with 2 postseason victories. If we do not make it this year, it'll be 4-10. We need to fire and terminate Mr. John Harbaugh from the Baltimore Ravens. He will rightfully deserve it after all these horrible and horrid decision-making that cost us games. So, but I'm taking the Bengals here because the Bengals' offensive line has played better. They've allowed 3 sacks over the last 2 games, where they gave up 13 in the first 2 games. The Ravens' defense gives up the most passing yards and the second most points per game. And Joe Burrow he had 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the Bengals' offense has Jamar, and Tyler, probably the best 3-headed monster of receivers in the league. And we've lost 5 straight home games, and if we get a massive lead on the Bengals, nobody's going to believe it. Nobody's going to believe, oh my God, we're up 15. We're up 24. Until we get 0-0-0, nobody's going to believe the Ravens are going to be able to hold on to it. Because I think the Bengals have an offense that can cover back to it, and I just don't think the Ravens offense can respond if they don't get turnovers or big plays. So, should be a great game, but I think at the end of the day, Joe Burrow outplays Lamar Jackson and proves that he is a better quarterback than Lamar Jackson. And Lamar, for as great as his numbers are, in the biggest spots, he just will continue to show. He just maybe can't show up. So that's why I like the Cincinnati Bengals here, plus 3.5, and Cincinnati straight up. And finally, the Monday night game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Las Vegas Raiders. Mahomes is the fastest quarterback to 20,000 passing yards in 67 games. Also, fun fact here. So here are Patrick Mahomes' numbers. He has played the number 1 scoring defense 7 times. He is 6-1. The Chiefs have scored 31 points per game. He averages 322 passing yards a game. He has 15 TDs and 7 interceptions. And also, Andy Reid is the first coach in NFL history to guide 3 different quarterbacks, Donovan McNabb, Alex Smith, and Patrick Mahomes, to 50 wins as a starter for each of those guys. That's incredible. I mentioned all the bad stuff about the Raiders before. Kudos for them for winning, but they were going in a Monday night game to where Derek Carr, on the road against the Chiefs, has only won 1 time in that fluky 42-38 game at the end where Mahomes threw a pick, where Mahomes couldn't convert a 4th down. I think, this is going to be an absolute rout. I think the Raiders bounce back after the bye. They play Houston in 2 weeks after that. I think they move forward and bounce back. But I think the Chiefs, they're just too good, too consistent, and I just think Mahomes overwhelms. I think the Chiefs can do what the Denver couldn't do and generate enough offense to bury the Raiders into the ground. So that's why Kansas City are -7 and Kansas City straight up. So those are my thoughts for this week. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page. Shoutouts to Fire and Brim Sports, Half Moon Spicks, Andrew Warren, The Blind Canadian Cat, Edward Lerner, Geo Knows, all those guys that got Bridgewater's Finest, all those guys and gals that make predictions like I do. Check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page on Facebook. Check out everybody's picks and views for the season. And until next week, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Until next time, everyone, so long.